in the state assembly, and the media is not giving this bill the sort of coverage that it demands because it is going to be so unjust, so controversial, and I ultimately believe that it won't be upheld in court. But in the meantime, you're going to have a lot of parents traumatized by this. You're going to have a lot of kids traumatized by this. And of course, it's part of that larger far left agenda that is anti-parent and trying to advance some bizarre social agenda at the expense of our kids.
Explain what it is.
Sure.
Break it down.
And so there are two provisions in this bill that we have to look at that are particularly controversial. Let me first start out by saying, in California, we have ample legislation already on the books it stretches back 80 to 100 years that allows the state to take kids out of abusive homes. We all support that. It's all necessary. We need tools to protect children. This would amend all of that legislation in two profound ways. Number one, it would remove the standard that requires that a therapist or a psychologist or a psychiatrist make a finding of credible fear or threat. Right now, in order to take a child out of a home, the professional has to document and prove that there's enough evidence that the child has been molested, abused, that they're a threat to themselves or others. And then they also have to make the determination that they are mature enough to make this decision and be on their own. Now, where would the child be put? The child would be put in what they call a residential shelter, also known as a homeless shelter. Okay, and so some of these shelters do cater to children or youth or teens, but again, these are not very secure places for them to be going. The second major change here, besides removing the burden of proof from the state, is who gets to make the decision. Under existing law, it must be a licensed psychotherapist, a psychiatrist, or a counselor, a licensed counselor. Now, this law would allow it to be made, the determination to be made by a trainee or an intern. They actually use those terms. So can you imagine this? You have an intern that doesn't have to bear the burden of credible fear, credible threat to the child, to say, you know what, this 12-year-old is mature enough. Well, hell, you're still trying to read your mental health textbook from college. You're not actually a professional yet. And so this bill is reckless, it's dangerous, and it's offensive to parents. It's also part of this false narrative. The narrative that's been going around from the far left is somehow parents are bad. Parents are threats to their children. Parents don't love their kids. Parents are going to hurt their kids. This is nonsense. Are there bad parents out there? Yes, but we have the legislation, the systems in place to protect children. What they're saying is that if a parent doesn't agree to allow their kid to do sex reassignment surgery or gender therapies, which, by the way, all of the studies show that 80% of children who have gender identity questions, 80% resolve it in favor of remaining in their own identity. Is it a surprise that kids are kind of confused as they're growing up? They don't know what they don't know. And so a loving parent wants to pump the brakes and say, hey, we don't need to make any decisions real quick. Be who you want to be. Let's figure this out. The best time for these kids to make these decisions is when they really are mature enough as an adult. Now, if a parent is abusing a trans kid or an LGBT kid, we have existing legislation to document that and remove the child. This legislation goes far beyond that, which is why I believe that it will be overturned on due process grounds. But here's the problem. How many parents get to be victimized by this law? How many children will be taken out and put into a, quote, residential shelter, homeless camp? How many kids are going to get hurt? And these legislators, the Democrats supporting this bill, they don't care about the carnage. They don't care that it's illegal. They just need to showboat for their rabid, far-left LGBT activist groups who want to say that parents somehow are bad. No, we need to put a stop to the anti-parent agenda. They're saying that parents shouldn't be told when a child is thinking about changing their gender. I think that the parent should be the first to know, so that the parent can be aware and can support and can dialogue and can monitor. They're trying to make sure that children are exposed to these ideas and encouraged to do things at a young age without consent of the parent in terms of the curriculum and the input. We need to make sure that the curriculum goes back to the fundamental basics. And then finally, they're trying to weaponize the social service system through AB 665. We've got to stop this bill. There is still time to create a public outcry, because the governor would have to sign it. And so people need to go on the website and share the story about it. They go to reformcalifornia.org. We have a top story up there about the bill with the actual legislative language. Share that with your friends and family. I appreciate the fact that KUSI has been focused on this bill and promoting awareness on it so that people, if they don't agree, can contact their legislator. And then finally, we need to make this an issue in the upcoming elections. Any state assembly member or state senator who voted for it needs to be thrown out of office. And we're not going to get all of them, but we can get a good number of them. So reformcalifornia.org to join the fight.
Carl, say this bill ends up passing.
It will.
Okay, so say if this bill passes and these children get removed from their home and they are put into that temporary shelter, what happens when that child who is 12 years old
Well,
says, I want to go back home?
Well, you'll have all the LGBT rabid activists pushing back on that child, telling them what they're doing is exactly right. This is going to be a scary environment. And let me just be very clear. Gays and lesbians don't support this crap. They're offended by it. I know gay couples that have children. I know lesbian couples that have children. They say, I don't like the curriculum that they're trying to present in class. I don't like this bill. And so what is really frustrating, I think, about this is that in the name of equity and LGBT equality, the LGBT community has been hijacked by a group of far-left political activists who just want campaign contributions. Let me be very clear. We don't have a wave of homophobia happening in this country. There's no wave of child abuse against trans and LGBT kids. But there is a need for these LGBT groups to raise money through fear. And so they put fear in their members. They say there's some sort of hate crime going on, and that's why you should be donating to these groups. Enough. Okay, we need to understand that there's a political agenda here. It does not reflect anything that's actually happening on the ground. And the result is that parents and children alike will end up bearing the price.
All right, Carl DeMaio, Chairman of Reform California. You're
Thanks
right.
so much
I
for
mean,
coming in. This is
vote
really
differently. I mean, come on.
There are bad bills out there. This is in the top one or two.
This one's
This
like
is bad.
evil bad.
Yeah. And there's a
Well,
lot
you
of
saw the
competition.
drag march in New York where they were chanting, "We're coming for your children." Those are the same people that you're talking about that are in favor of this bill.
Yeah, there is definitely a radical agenda here, and I want to make sure people do not associate the entire LGBT community
Sure.
with it, because there's
Right.
a story the media doesn't want to tell, and that is there's an uprising quietly going on within the LGBT community where the members are embarrassed and actually angry that their identity is being used to advance policy that is pretty darn extreme.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, Carl.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
coming in.
Thanks so much for
Appreciate it.
coming in. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.